Hey, active listeners. We would like to thank each and every one of you for your support and for sticking with us while we all weather this storm. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without you. With that being said, Active Shooter the podcast will be taking a short break during the month of May to work on producing more great episodes for you, as well as remastering some of our older episodes. We will be back with a brand new episode for you on June 1st. All Patreon pledges will be paused for the month of May as well. As always, thank you for listening, and be safe.
We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the warehouse.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 16910 means we got shots fired. 4:15 ASL. Route 291 sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter, active shooter.
Active shooter mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
We begin with news out of Nevada, where a quiet breakfast at IHOP was shattered this morning. It happened in Carson City. A group of National Guard members were gathered for a meeting, and a man with a rifle opened fire, killing 2 Guard members, a 3rd victim, and then himself. And tonight, everyone is looking for the answer why.
September 6, 2011 started as a typical Tuesday morning in Carson City, Nevada. Especially for the patrons of the local IHOP restaurant. IHOP is also known as the International House of Pancakes. Some diners included 5 members of the National Guard. They were gathered around tables to sip coffee, enjoying the restaurant's signature pancakes, and spend time relaxing together before moving on with the busyness of their day.
Well, we were sitting there eating breakfast, and we were waiting for our second granddaughter to come in with other great-grandkids, and we decided to go ahead and have our menu taken, and so she took our order, and just about the time she took our order, we heard the pop, 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 pop.
At 8:57 a.m., the 32-year-old shooter pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant in a blue minivan that was registered to his brother. On the van was a sticker reading, quote, "Support our troops." Brent did not arrive empty-handed. With him was a Norinco MAK-90 automatic rifle and a Colt Agent. The gun had been modified with the stock being removed, causing it to become a fully automatic weapon, which is an illegal modification. Brent exited the parked van, and at 8:58 a.m. opened fire on the IHOP, its patrons, and other nearby businesses.
It's IHOP. There's a shooting going on. Multiple shooting. Shooting where? In the IHOP. In the IHOP? In the IHOP. It's an automatic weapon. Why don't you get over there? Okay. We're going to go in the way. Hey! He's shooting at us now. Okay. All right. Get in it. See if you can get in it. Automatic weapons. Automatic weapons, like long weapons? There's one guy with an automatic weapon. He's shooting everybody.
We thought it was just a bunch of fireworks. And then all of a sudden, the glass started to shatter. My partners went under the table, and I stayed up and watched what was happening unfolding in front of me.
After entering the IHOP, Brent moved to the back of the restaurant, where he continued to open fire. A woman, eating with her husband, was the first to be murdered. Her husband was shot as well, although he survived his injuries.
I grabbed each of my kids on each side of me and throw him under the table, and I start seeing the glass shatter behind everybody's heads.
Brent then aimed fire on the table of the National Guardsmen. All 5 were shot, with 3 later dying of their injuries. Gunfire was then turned on the other diners, hitting and injuring 2 others. He then left the IHOP and began firing upon nearby businesses, shattering windows in an attempt to harm those inside.
All I heard was about a heavy 8 seconds of automatic gunfire. Just saw people running. I heard another burst go off, and then I was just getting the hell out of there.
A woman riding on a motorcycle was hit by one of these shots, but her helmet prevented what could have been a fatal injury. Fortunately, no further injuries or fatalities were reported to have been caused by direct fire, although indirect damages are too significant to enumerate.
And I just didn't know where to apply my hand on the young female because she had been shot 3 times. What he did to those people, they didn't stand a chance. They were just there for breakfast.
The chaos lasted until the arrival of local law enforcement at 9:06 a.m., at which point Brent took the pistol and fired 1 shot into his head. He was taken to the hospital but ultimately died several hours after shooting himself.
Units responding to IHOP South Carson subject shooting. Subjects in the parking lot possibly shooting subjects.
What, the front part or rear, do we know?
Subjects may be at Rayleigh's now. 1 male with red shirt, long gun, automatic. Yeah, heavy-set, white male, red shirt, black pants, HMA, possibly 35 to 40 years of age.
What, do we have anybody shot actually at the location?
5 or 6 people down. Subject may have shot himself. Now we're getting information that he may be between IHOP and locals down by a blue van. 5140 confirming the suspect is down.
Can you give us a couple ambulances in here?
They're coming.
16.5.
10-4.
Adam 1, I copy NAC, going to do traffic control and keep it closed. Also notify streets, we're going to need support. Right, I got medical here.
10-4.
All units, make sure you maintain every... Adam 1, go ahead. What do we have for a victim count yet? 7 or 8, and possibly more. Has Quorum been notified yet?
Negative.
The shooting lasted a total of 8 minutes. In that time, 30 rounds were fired in the IHOP, with a total of 79 shots being fired. A subsequent search of Brent's minivan found he brought 2 additional firearms with him, as well as a total of 595 rounds of ammunition. A total of 11 people were shot, and another 3 were declared dead at the scene. A 4th was pronounced dead later at the hospital. Additionally, a lockdown was put in place at the Capitol and Supreme Court buildings for 40 minutes, out of fear that this was not an isolated attack.
Because the military members were part of this unfortunate, unplanned, tragic event this morning, that caused for some extra security measures to be placed on state and military buildings here in northern Nevada.
8 minutes. Thousands of people were impacted. 4 were gone forever. Florence Louise Donovan Gunderson, who preferred to be called Flory, was 67 years old when she went out to breakfast that morning with her husband Wally. Born on July 16, 1944 in Boston, Massachusetts, Flory was raised in the town of Newton, where she later graduated from Newton High School in 1962. A year later, she married her first husband, with whom she had 2 daughters, Sandy and Cindy. Settling into life as a stay-at-home mom, Flory moved to different states multiple times, leading her to eventually settle on the other side of the country, in West Covina, California. While living there, she and her husband separated in 1979. In a display of exceptional character, Flory made sure to remain amicable with her ex-husband for the sake of their daughters. Single and financially independent, Flory moved to South Lake Tahoe, where she worked multiple positions in the early education field. She also volunteered as a ski host at the local Heavenly Ski Resort, and then went on to become an employee of the finance department of the Harrah's casino chain, a position she held for 10 years. While in this position, she met her future husband, Wally. The couple found they had similar interests, including traveling in the outdoors. The couple often traveled around the United States in their motorhome, both to see the sights and to visit friends and family. Flory was also known to enjoy camping, skiing, sledding, and baking with her grandchildren. Perhaps proving there is no timeline on finding love, Flory married Wally on September 16, 2004, at Fallen Leaf Lake. Almost precisely 7 years later, Flory went to breakfast with Wally, where they found themselves under the attack of a lone gunman. Flory was the first victim to be shot. Wally was shot as well, but he survived. Flory was declared dead at the scene. She was the first of the 4 casualties. Major Heath Austin Kelly was born in Kenner, Louisiana on May 20th, 1976. He went to John Curtis Christian School, where he graduated in 1994, after which he attended Norwich University until his graduation in 1998. Following the completion of his education, he enlisted in the Army, where he served as a field artillery officer from 1998 until 2005. During this time, he was awarded the National Defense Service Medal and the Kuwait Defense Service Medal. He also received commendations for the Global War on Terrorism and Iraq campaign. Following his service in the Army, Heath enlisted in the Nevada National Guard in 2007. In 2010, he was stationed in Carson City, where he served as a major at the Joint Force headquarters located there. He was at breakfast with his fellow National Guardsmen when the shooting began. Major Kelly was 35 years old at the time of his murder. Known for being a devoted husband and father, he left behind his wife, Tracy, and 2 young children, Cassidy, age 4, and Tristan, who was only 9 weeks old when he lost his father.
This kind of pain, there's no medicine. It hurts to know that everything that should have been won't be, because somebody chose to do the wrong thing. I choose to remember him as his honorable father and husband and defender of peace. It's such a waste of such a wonderful human being.
Sergeant First Class Miranda Summerwind McElhenney was born July 22, 1980 in El Dorado County, California. She enjoyed baking and was known for baking cakes for any occasion. Miranda was also known for being reliable, kind, and telling things like they were. In 1998, Miranda enlisted in the military, eventually joining the Nevada National Guard and becoming a Sergeant First Class. Her welcoming spirit remained throughout her time in the military, as evidenced in the way she made herself a mentor for the young women who decided to join the National Guard. The administrative sergeant was known for her, quote, winning smile, which persisted even when she was not around. On the morning of September 6th, she wrote on the board outside her office door, quote, staff meeting, will return by 11. She punctuated the message with a smiley face. Miranda was sitting with her fellow National Guardsmen when the attack began. She was shot, but did not die immediately. She was taken to the hospital where, despite best efforts, she passed away from her injuries. At 31 years old, Sergeant Miranda McElhenney was the youngest casualty of the attack.
Was a fast riser in our enlisted corps. She also owned a small baking company and was famous in our headquarters, providing cupcakes for every promotion.
Sergeant First Class Christian Rieg was born March 3, 1973 in Torrance, California. His father was one of the local reverends of the town.